A few weeks ago, I had a very unusual experience. While I was walking to the chair where I normally do my morning devotions, God spoke into my spirit in a very commanding voice. And He said, "Pray bigger prayers." Well, I was stunned. This took me completely by surprise. I hadn't started my devotions yet. I wasn't in a prayerful mood, and I hadn't even sat down. In fact, I was so startled by it, my immediate response in my spirit was, "You've got to be kidding." Now, I have no trouble praying big prayers for other people, for churches, for mission groups, for organizations, but I'd never thought of praying big prayers for myself. You see, I thought to pray big prayers for myself was arrogant, proud, presumptuous, greedy, self-centered, and totally un-Canadian. You see, I was accustomed to praying humble, meek, conservative prayers like, "If it's your will," or "It would be nice if." But God clearly interrupted me to stop me from continuing to pray these weak prayers. In fact, God was commanding me, ask Him for more. Well, that actually felt pretty awkward. But you know, Jesus clearly taught this. In Mark chapter 11, He told us and His disciples that we could speak to mountains to move them. And in Luke chapter 11, Jesus is very clear that we are to persist with big prayers. In the parable of the friend who comes to his friend at midnight looking for food, it's because the visitor was persisting, he was bold, he wouldn't stop, and he did all the things that your parents have taught you were rude, and his prayers were answered because of his persistence. And even Jesus had to persist with big prayers. Do you remember the time He prayed for the blind man? And after the first prayer, the blind man was only partially healed. He had to persist and pray a big prayer a second time. So Jesus is teaching us that we need to persist with big prayers to see breakthrough. And the outcome of these big prayers is God's responsibility. Our responsibility is to pray them. Now here's a very sobering thought. How much has God been wanting to work with you and for you, and it's been held back because your prayers haven't been big enough to release His will into your life? I can tell you that I'm praying differently now because I don't want to hold back God's will because of my weak prayers. You should be praying differently too. So to live a transformed life, you need to pray bigger prayers and persist. Now I want to hear from you. What are some of the big prayers that you've persisted with that God has answered? Just leave your comments in the box below and encourage all of us. Now, if this is your first visit here, you need to get my free self-assessment guide. And to do that, just subscribe to my weekly email newsletter, and you know where to find the subscription form. It's always right there. And I'll talk to you again next week, but this week, pray bigger prayers. It'll change your life.